Hello, everyone. Welcome to Better Talks. I'm here today with a special guest, and I'm going to kindly allow him to introduce himself to the audience.
Everybody. So my name is Doug Betts, and I am the founder of Sure Betts HR Solutions, based in the UK, and I'm there to help business owners have a great experience at work and employees too.
Can you tell us more about your company and what you guys do for businesses?
Of course. So really, my company's does two different things. So the first one is all about leadership and coaching and training in that area. So I will take nervous, newly promoted line managers who've perhaps never been trained in terms of how to talk to people and how to have those types of difficult conversation. And I will give them the confidence that they need to get the respect and the results they deserve for their team. So that's the first thing I do. And then the second part of my business is doing human resources consulting. So that is helping business owners create a positive experience for their employees and themselves so that their employees don't want to run away and work for the competition, and that they will retain their best staff and get their businesses to grow in the ways that they want it to.
I'm really happy to hear you talk about the importance of employees in the
Mhm.
workplace, human capital.
Mm.
And most times we focus too much on management of resources and we neglect motivating,
Mm.
empowering the employees. Because at the end of the day, who's going to produce the result for the company? Who's going to serve the customers?
That's all right. I was just to say, yes, one that's often overlooked, like you say. So this is why I wanted to sort of make more of a point on it. No, please carry on.
Absolutely. So, what does it take to be an effective leader in the work setting? I mean, a manager
So,
or an employee trying to be a leader.
okay, so I think there's sort of like three very broad but very important areas for this. I think the first one is that ability to understand other people and how they tick. It's you having that emotional intelligence yourself to be able to read how people think, how people operate, and how they're likely to behave depending on what you say to them and how you say it. So I think that's the first thing, and it's so easy to get that one wrong, which is why I sort of put this first on my list. Yeah, of
You
course.
talked about emotional intelligence,
Mm.
understanding your employees. So, are you saying that we don't understand our employees? That is why we're not able to treat them in a way that they'll feel a sense of empowered,
Mm.
a sense of loyalty.
Mhm. That's right. That's exactly what I'm saying. There's so many people leaders out there who just don't have that ability yet to recognize they'll do things or they'll treat people a certain way, and then they'll scratch their head and wonder why they've got annoyed and left or gone off sick or put that grievance in. And it just comes as a complete shock to them that actually it could be the way they're putting the message across and it's the way they're treating them. I mean, ultimately at work, people want to come to work to solve problems, make the world a better place, and to feel empowered to do it. And if managers aren't providing that environment for people, or that safe space where people feel they can do that, then yeah, it is going to fail.
Wow. You can go on with your next point.
All right, thank you. So the second thing, it kind of follows on from it really. It's a leader being able to be confident in what they can say and what they can't say, and to be able to have the confidence in those types of conversations. So therefore, they need to build relationships with people in their team, and they need to know and understand how to do that. But they also need to be comfortable and confident in having those difficult conversations, which I know so many people leaders will shy away from doing. But it's
Mm.
really important that people do it, because the longer you leave a problem, the worse it's going to get. So it's important that they are confident just to jump in and nip some of those issues in the bud before they get out of control.
You're saying
Mm.
that managers should be prepared to tackle the hard conversations in the workplace, not to fear those type of conversations, because when they don't talk about it, I think that will prolong the situation, as you said. And you mentioned having the confidence and the courage to actually tackle those hard conversations. And at the end,
Mm.
they hope that you'll find a solution that is favorable to all parties involved.
Mm. That's right, because the thing I often get asked by managers is when I'm coaching them through how to do those conversations before they have to sit down and do it. They often go, "Can I say that?" And a lot of the times I say, "Well, yes, you can if you put it in the right way." I think you get two extremes of managers. You get the ones who open their mouths too wide and say too
Mm,
much and get themselves into even bigger trouble. But then you get the other ones who really need to say stuff that they are allowed to say, and yet they're too scared to.
mm. Interesting. Wow. So it's just pretty much applying wisdom when to
It's applying
say.
wisdom, applying sort of my 20 plus years of knowledge and experience into sort of helping people, because I find from business to business, it's the same kind of issues that crop up, just in slightly different forms, and you just adapt how you advise people depending on the culture of that business and the manager you're talking to at the time.
So in essence, what you're trying to say is that one of the key components to be an effective leader in the workplace is communication.
Yeah. And if you listen to most staff surveys, or the biggest thing that people will moan about, they'll always say it's a lack of communication in the workplace.
Mm,
And for me, that's not about somebody giving away all the company's confidential commercial secrets and sharing absolutely everything with everybody. It's just about managers thinking, how would I like to be treated if I was in my employee's shoes? What
mm.
am I going to be able to say to them that will get the best out of them? And what could be the implications if I get this wrong? And it's just having that thought process. And then managers are at least then updating their teams on what's going on, what their expectations are. And again, it just makes things a lot easier.
So if I can ask you a question, what do you think about criticism in the workplace in terms of being constructive or destructive, depending on how the manager delivers that communication?
It can be really destructive if you don't get it right, and it won't help, because it's like the old-fashioned manager who wouldn't give anybody any feedback until the annual appraisal. They'd save it all up and then come out with a long shopping list of things they've done wrong. That happened to me
Mm,
20 plus years ago too, so I know how that feels. But it doesn't help you get better. Constructive criticism does, and I think actually we learn more from our mistakes and the things we get
mm,
right sometimes. And I think this is what we need managers to focus in on. It's having a culture where people feel they can make some mistakes and that they're not going to be
mm.
crucified for doing it, and that they're going to be able to then learn from them and grow. But then the employees have to be open to receive that criticism and know that it's not, shouldn't be taken personally, and the manager needs to put it across in the right way so that those employees do learn from it. And I think a good employee will be open to criticism because they'll want to always know, how can I do that even better? And it's how we continue to learn and grow as people in whatever trade or profession we're working in.
Mm. Interesting. So this leads me to my second question of the importance of leadership, the role that it plays in the
Mm,
growth of the business. I mean, the growth of the actual employees,
mm,
instilling confidence in them, um, continuous education,
mm,
because most times managers or the company do not offer opportunity for their employees to grow on a professional level and also on a personal level too, because if an employee is dealing with anger issues and that is being displayed in the workplace, don't you think a manager could figure out an external source that will be able to help with stress management in the workplace?
mm. Definitely. And I think in the scenario you talk about, um, it's where it's about continuous ongoing improvement. I think for somebody with anger issues, chucking them on a one-day course in a classroom isn't going to solve that. It's about continuous coaching, mentoring, developing them in the workplace, getting them to recognize triggers. And yes, you could have external therapists and professionals who can help with some of that as well. But there's also got to be a desire in that particular circumstance for the employee to actually want to change themselves, and to actually recognize that they need to change and recognize they've got some behavior that perhaps isn't good.
So, how would you go about balancing work and life? Because I know sometimes we want to differentiate our personal life from our work, but
Mm,
it doesn't work at times because whatever happens in your personal life, we tend to bring it in our work in our workspace. But then how do we, as managers, how would you be able to show a sense of care,
mm,
not just for in terms of work, but
Mm,
also a sense of care as a human being that I
mm,
hear you, I listen to you,
mm.
I know what you're going through.
Yeah, and I think with the work-life balance, and I think yes, there's the time, and there's also the bit about personality in the workplace, and people feel they can be themselves at work because quite often people will behave one way at home and a different way at work, and actually it should be the same person and the same kind of behaviours. And yes, you're right. People can bring themselves to work now. They should feel that they can be what's called their authentic selves at work, so psychologically safe. So if they are
Mm,
having issues outside of work, it's important they do talk to their managers about them, and those managers need to be empathetic. I said empathetic rather than sympathetic, but it's that the fact they will listen, they can support to a point, and they can signpost. So if they know that they perhaps might need help above and beyond what a manager can give, they can signpost them in the right direction by getting the right advice. And I think that is so important. But you need a manager with the right skills so at least they can listen even if they can't solve the problem directly. They know at least what to do or how to behave in that circumstance. Because what that means is employees will then feel they can talk to them about bigger stuff. They won't try and keep secrets from them. It will aid the communication that we've been talking about as well. So hopefully, yeah, positives all round for being able to do that. And I think it also means you don't want managers to jump to the wrong conclusions because I've seen it time and time again where a manager will say, well, I want to get rid of so and so from my team. They used to be really good, but they've not been performing very much lately. And actually, it could be something outside of work. And the first thing a manager should be doing is just trying to point out there's a change in behaviour and to see if there's any particular underlying reasons that they need to be aware of. And then that will solve a lot of things rather than hiding behind a procedure just to try and lose somebody because they don't want to deal with it. And yes,
mm,
sometimes I've
mm.
actually known managers go too far the other way and they get too emotionally involved. And actually, I need to coach them to step back a little bit because they're not expected to fix all the problems, but they can just be that signposter and that effective listener.
Wow, that's a profound insight. Um, I know we focus more on the manager helping the employees to become better.
Mm,
What do you think employees can also do to help their managers? Because they're human beings,
mm.
they don't have all the answers. And as employees, don't you think we can also help our managers for them to become better managers?
Yes. Again, I hate to twist it back the other way, but it needs the managers to be open to feedback. Um,
Interesting.
And if they are, then yes, it's not just open season on the manager where you can say what you like, but it's just encouraging employees to give feedback. And I mean, when I've had teams in the past, I've said, "How do you like to be managed?" which is a really good question to ask.
Mm,
But sometimes I used to volunteer that information myself anyway. So when I used to be an employee, it was, look, I know you're there. If I need you, I'll ask you for help. I'll always tell you what I'm doing. I'll be very transparent. And just I want you to back me up if I'm right and somebody's challenging me. And that was my shopping list, and I'd be quite open
mm.
about that. And I think it's again creating that culture where people can sort of give that feedback because managers aren't this mysterious lair that you don't talk to very often and you bow down to anymore. They're there to advise, they're there to guide. But yeah, I think most managers or a good one will welcome feedback from their employees rather than just surrounding themselves with yes people who won't ever disagree with them. I think, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done on the part of the manager here to sort of create that culture where people feel they can be open and honest. But yeah, in turn, to answer your question, I would encourage employees to be just that constructively, of course, again, and to treat their manager in the way that they'd like to be treated. But I think that yeah, that is really important.
Thank you. Another question is because more questions are coming because this is really an
That's
interesting conversation. We live in a digital world where pretty much technology has taken over every function of business, even HR. You
mm,
know, how do we create an environment where there's that human interaction? Because most times when you're in a corporate setting,
mm,
employees are on their small box, their laptop, their
mm,
computer, their iPads, isolated from their colleagues and less human interaction. Do you think that will, like, what's your prediction regarding less human interaction as a result of technology disrupting
mm,
the way things are done? I know for efficiency.
mm. I mean, I love technology is my first thing on it because I think there's lots of things that can be automated and should be because as we evolve it's important that rather than having people doing menial jobs, you have people doing more exciting stuff and leaving the tech to do with some of the background stuff, the grunt work. But I do think there's some things that can never be replaced by full automation, and they will always need a human to human touch because ultimately it's how we've evolved as a species,
Mm,
it's how we're wired. So I think it's important that you recognize the balance between those two things. And for me, yeah, some people can feel very isolated if they're working at home most of the time. So it's about creating the right experiences to bring your team together in real life. And for me, there's got to be a good purpose behind it, not just because it's a Wednesday and that's an allocated day to come into the office. And it's about sort of finding activities that people will do that will bring them together as a team, both remotely as well as in person. And for me, it's not just about sort of what I call enforced jollity, because I don't like those kind of activities where you're told you will start having fun or else. I think it's important that you find meaningful activities that that team will engage with, and as the leader, you find out how they all tick and what those are likely to be, and then you have reasons to bring people together. Because I know when I used to work in an office, I'd pop in, but you'd pick up conversations and things that you wouldn't have heard at home that's relevant to the work you're doing. So I think there's still definitely a place for human interactions, and it's important that those don't go away altogether, because I think this is why we have a lot of the mental health crises we do,
mm.
because people aren't communicating. They're spending too much time looking at their screens and their phones, and they need to get outside and look at a bit of nature or look at another human face to face and
Yeah.
forget the technology for an hour or so.
Wow, that's interesting. Transferable keys to success that one can apply in their professional life and your business based on your expertise in human resources and coaching and management.
Okay, so I think number one is know that it's okay not to know everything yourself and that you can't do it all yourself because you will burn out. So listen to expert advice, buy into other experts, whether that's as employees, as contractors, that will help your business grow and flourish. And so that's my first one. My second one, and it goes on from a lot of what we've been talking about, is don't compare yourself to other people all the time. Sometimes you're going to be ahead, sometimes you're going to be behind, but I think it's important to being open to being self-aware and self-critical too. So I think, like as a manager, you can do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats analysis on yourself, and
Mm.
sort of have that level of self-awareness. And thirdly, I would say build positive relationships. So not just inside your business, but outside of it as well. So network with your local industry, with other professionals, with other business people in your local area, because you never know when you might need them or they might need you. Because I think it's too easy if you work just for a business in house that you just get too institutionalized and you forget the outside world. So I think it's really good to, yeah, remember that it's there and to get yourself involved with talking to people.
Knowledge or skill set that managers are looking for in this time in terms of hiring somebody to work for them.
Okay, well, a lot of that I think will depend on the culture of their organization and whether they're a good fit. I mean, there's fundamentally two things. It's can they do the job and can I work with them? But I
Mm,
think it's all too easy for managers to write airy-fairy job descriptions that mean absolutely nothing. So,
yeah.
you don't just want somebody to write somebody who's conscientious and diligent. I've seen that on job descriptions because, look, let's be honest, when would you hire somebody or want to hire somebody who isn't those things? So I think it's also about not just looking at how many years experience somebody's got, because they could have 20, be awful, they could have two and be amazing. So it's really, they should be looking for people who can bring something to the team that perhaps they can't, somebody who will bring in new ideas and be an expert in their own area and it will elevate the team. Somebody who's willing to grow and develop, who at the same time they know they can challenge them, change them if need be, and when I say change, it's not give them a complete personality refit because they're always going to fundamentally be that person, but give them that opportunity that if you can see potential in them to grow, that you can develop them in the future so they stay with the company and they grow and have a career with them. And
Interesting.
I think the final bit on it is you also need, I don't want to be offensive, your plodders as well. So the people who don't necessarily want a high flying career but are very reliable and they just come in and do the same thing every day. And I think you need the right mix of
Mm,
both of those types in there as well. So it's also about a good hiring manager looking to complement their, look at who's in the team already and find people who will complement that as well, not just do the traditional thing of recruiting in their own image, which a lot of managers love to do, and then they just end up with lots of clones of themselves, which ultimately isn't healthy.
Interesting. The question that I wanted to ask you just came to my mind was, I mean, things have changed in our culture where people are looking for more. Even when it comes to work, they don't want to just go to work just for the sake of making money. Money, yes, it's an incentive, it's a motivation. Just like right now, we have so many social activism going on in the world. You know, that also applies to work, where people are saying, okay, yes, I go to work, I make money, but that's not enough. So how can a manager go about motivating their employees, not just with incentive of making more money or having promotion, but also giving them a sense of meaning? Like, I want to be able to come to work on Monday. Yes, I know I have to pay my bills, but I want to come to work knowing that I am adding value to the company. I am adding value to humanity.
Yeah, and that's right. That's why a lot of people do what they do, and it's why I do what I do as well. The key thing there for a leader is they need to understand the vision, the mission, and the values of the company they work for, and how their team and their role fits into that, and to communicate that to their team. So you're not just a siloed team doing your own thing, and you're sort of protecting yourselves from the outside world. You are there seeing how you've got a greater purpose. And it comes back to what I was saying about people want to come to work to solve problems. They want the autonomy to be able to do it. That's what will give them job satisfaction, and they need that bigger meaning and purpose. And if you're a business leader who's now scratching your head saying, well, I know what my company vision and mission is, but I don't know whether anybody else does, that's your job to communicate that to them, and
Mm,
quickly.
mm,
And everything that you do, the way you behave in a business, always has to come back to those three things: the vision, the mission, and the values. And I have done work helping people understand and create those if they don't know what they are and they can't articulate them, or perhaps they've got an idea in their head but it's not clearly articulated to the wider businesses. So it's about getting that out there. And I think if you do that, then the meaningful work and that motivation will follow. And then it comes back to the other things we've been talking about, like the regular communication, regular updates, expectations, and actually celebrating the success that people make. So you can see there's progress. People aren't just coming in on a day-to-day basis and not seeing results. You can see the results that people get as a result, and that will then highlight and motivate people to carry on doing what they're doing.
Don't you think most times we have the mission statement, the vision, the strategy, sometimes written in a business plan or on the world? Don't you think that that should also reflect the day-to-day practice in the organizational
Yes.
culture? Because we can have it on the wall, we can have it on paper, but we don't practice what we preach in terms of the corporate values, our mission statement, our vision, our strategies, our targets, and then the manager doesn't reflect it on a day-to-day basis. As you said, the manager doesn't communicate it.
Mm. That's right, and it's dangerous territory. And as you've quite rightly said, it's not enough just to put them in posters on the walls. They've actually got to mean something. I mean, most companies have very similar values, actually. They all have integrity. But again, I go back to, when would you want people not to do that? But it's, how does that actually translate across in terms of how people behave? Do the leadership team behave like that? Does the CEO behave like that? And
Mm,
therefore the managers do, because otherwise it will become meaningless. And it's got
yes,
to be across every process that that business has, every interaction, whether that's with a customer, whether it's with internal employees. Those actually have to mean something and be practiced. And they need to be defined first, as we've been saying, and clearly. But yeah, it's very much about the job of the person at the top to live them, breathe them, and put their weight behind them. Otherwise, people will think, well, if they can't be bothered to do it, why should I?
absolutely. Well, that's a wrap, pretty much. These are all the questions I have for you, and I learned a lot from you. It's very very insightful. Before we conclude, if you can kindly share with the audience, if they're interested in to know more about your business, your service, how they can reach you.
Yes, certainly. So, best way is to find me on my website, which is www.surebets. So that's SUREBETTSHR, all one word.com. And then from there, people can read some of my blog posts, find me on social media. If they want to join my mailing list and just get regular updates from me about a variety of things that will hopefully helpful topics around leadership and HR, then yeah, I'd be pleased to hear from anybody.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Dog.